Better Man is a musical biopic about British pop star Robbie Williams' rise to stardom. It's a pretty slick biopic, despite being kind of similar to some others. Let's talk about it. In this movie, we follow Robbie Williams, who is portrayed as a monkey. The movie tells his life story starting from when he was a young boy with a strong desire to be seen, and highlighting his music career where he goes from playing second fiddle in a boy band to being the big star that he always wanted to be. Throughout everything, Robbie's struggles tend to be the same. His biggest one is the movie's core subject, and that is his battle with depression. Robbie struggles with a constant stream of negative self-talk, and that is the biggest inhibitor on his music career. This is depicted on screen through surrealism. Throughout the movie, he literally sees images of himself judging him and telling him that he's not good enough. The movie tackles depression very well. It recognizes that it's something that some people have to battle every day, and that there are ways to fight it and then ways to make it worse. In addition to the surrealist depictions of him being haunted by depression, there's also a bit of surrealism in the musical numbers. Sometimes characters will break out in song and dance flash mob style, and sometimes the atmosphere will change and become a stage because that's where Robbie's imagining he is. So it is technically a musical biopic as opposed to an ordinary biopic where we only see them playing songs when they're being performed or over top of a montage. It's not too often that it happens, but there are those times where the musical numbers are sporadic and theatrical, and they do provide narrative value. Another thing that separates this movie from your average musician biopic is the fact that it's not about somebody whose career jumped off from their passion for music. Robbie Williams was a guy who was kind of just always in it for the fame. More than anything, he wants to be loved, subconsciously thinking that being admired will change how much he loves himself. That might sound superficial, but if we're being honest, it lines up with his life experience. This likely stems from his lifelong thirst for attention because he didn't get the love that he wanted from his father. Being admired by a world of strangers is what he thinks will fill that void. He's so starved for attention that he's very extra as a coping mechanism. He's very animated and reckless, which contributes to his key characteristic of being unevolved. And that is, of course, the narrative justification for him being depicted as a monkey. There's really no other reason baked into this movie. One could argue that another reason is so that Robbie Williams can play himself in this movie without using shoddy-looking de-aging and post-production, but that's not really a reason baked into the movie. Like if he were doing things like eating lots of bananas or eating flies out of somebody's hair, then that would be another reason for that comedic value. But there's really nothing here other than him being an animal, figuratively speaking. All that said, I did actually really enjoy him being a monkey. Not only did it make it easier to distinguish him in crowds, but it also made his childish proclivities charming when they otherwise could have just been annoying. It's a tough line to walk when creating a character who's a man-child. If done without careful consideration, they can end up feeling insufferable, but Robbie was thankfully pretty enjoyable in this movie. He's very energetic and sometimes pretty funny. I wouldn't say that he's laugh out loud funny, but he's sometimes a little bit funny. Maybe humorous is the word that I'm looking for. So I did not know much about Robbie Williams before this movie, which seems to be a trend with Americans. Like everyone I've talked to about this movie has responded, "Oh, Robbie Williams, I don't know who that is." It's honestly been cathartic because I knew next to nothing about him prior to seeing this. I know more now, but like with most biopics, I'm sure there are embellishments, which is totally fine because all biopics have embellishments. Things that didn't really happen can be included in the movie, and things that did really happen can be cut. That is par for the course when adapting a story for the screen. All of that is just to qualify myself to make the following criticisms because I'm not just reviewing the movie, I'm also explaining my experience with it, which is affected by familiarity. So I don't really care whether or not he actually did drugs or took his family and career for granted or had a tough childhood. I'm still very much allowed to say, oh, you mean like literally every musician biopic. Sorry if that was way too long and drawn out of a way to cushion that criticism, but really, how many more musician biopics are we gonna get with the same life experiences? That's not to say that it isn't an interesting life story of Robbie's. I'm just saying that we've already seen a lot of other movies that tell a very similar story, so those bombshells just don't hit as hard. My only other criticism is that the pacing didn't really feel rock solid, like the ending is really long and drawn out, and it was also, honestly, a little too precious. But then on the flip side, some parts of the movie just felt rushed. For example, about halfway through the movie, he has this whole arc with another character, and it was just expedited with the power of montage. It definitely could have had more of the spotlight, because when big things were happening at the tail end of that arc, they just didn't feel earned. But overall, this movie was still pretty enjoyable. It was, for some reason, given a $110 million budget, and it does feel like a big budget movie with all the spectacle and glam. It was a pretty decent movie overall. If you are looking for a character-driven story with a lot of energy, you might enjoy this one. But of course, if you are sick and tired of musician biopics that hum familiar notes, you might not enjoy this one. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Flight Risk.